Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. The year was 1899, a time when the American frontier still breathed dust and gunpowder, when towns rose and vanished almost overnight, and when justice depended more on reputation than law. In the lonely stretch of land between the Black Hills and the Montana Plains stood a forgotten settlement called Ashcroft's Bend. It was little more than a main street of wooden buildings, a church that never finished construction, and a graveyard already too full for a town so young. People passed through Ashcroft's Bend, but few stayed. Those who did carried secrets heavier than their saddlebags, and none carried a secret darker than Hattie Redbird. Hattie was known as a quiet woman. She kept her eyes lowered and her words few, and for years people mistook that silence for weakness. She lived alone in a small cabin at the edge of town, where the prairie grass met the tree line. Every morning before sunrise she walked into town to work at the dry goods store, folding fabric and sweeping dust from the floor, earning just enough to survive. To most she was invisible, to others she was an easy target. What no one in Ashcroft's Bend understood was that Hattie Redbird was watching, remembering, and waiting. Hattie had not always lived there. She had been born far to the south, near a river that twisted through red earth and cottonwood trees. Her father was a trekker, her mother a healer who knew plants by touch and smell alone. As a child, Hattie learned how to move quietly, how to read signs in the dirt, how to know when someone was lying just by the way their eyes shifted. It was a peaceful life, fragile but strong, until the day that peace was ripped apart. A group of men rode into their settlement under the excuse of trade. By the time they left, Hattie's world had burned behind them. She never spoke about that day aloud, but the images lived with her. Her father lying in the dirt, blood soaking into the soil he once read like a book. Her mother's hands, once steady and gentle, now still. Hattie survived by hiding, by becoming small, by learning that sometimes silence was the only shield you had. The men were never caught. They rode on, carrying their violence with them, blending into towns where no one asked questions. Years later, Hattie would learn that 3 of those men had settled in Ashcroft's Bend, reinvented as respectable citizens. When Hattie arrived in town, she recognized them immediately. Time had changed their faces, but not their eyes. There was Elias Crow, now the town's unofficial leader, owner of the largest ranch in the area, respected and feared in equal measure. There was Thomas Briggs, who ran the saloon, his laughter loud and false, his hands always too quick. And there was Jonah Pike, the deputy sheriff, a man trusted to uphold the law despite having none himself. They did not recognize her. To them, she was just another woman passing through, another face in a lifetime of forgotten ones. For years, Hattie watched them live freely while she swallowed her pain. She watched Crow host dinners and speak of morality. She watched Briggs slap men on the back and pour drinks for strangers. She watched Pike walk the streets with a badge that made him untouchable. Every day she told herself to leave, to forget, to survive somewhere else. And every night she dreamed of fire, of screams swallowed by the dark. The past refused to stay buried. It was the winter of 1899 when everything began to change. A young girl went missing on the road just outside town. People searched, asked questions, whispered theories, but the trail went cold. Hattie listened from the corner of the store, her heart pounding, because the fear in those whispers sounded familiar. She saw the way Briggs avoided questions, the way Pike shut down certain lines of inquiry, the way Crow reminded everyone not to jump to conclusions. That night, Hattie made a decision she had delayed for years. If the law would not protect the innocent, she would. Her revenge was not sudden or reckless. It was slow, deliberate, and surgical. Hattie understood something about fear that others did not. Fear, when planted carefully, grows on its own. She began with whispers, small truths spoken at the right time, a comment about how often Briggs stayed late at the saloon with the back door locked, a reminder that Pike had been traveling the road where the girl vanished, a quiet question about Crow's past that no one could quite answer. None of it was loud enough to start a fire, but together it created smoke. At the same time, she prepared. In the evenings, she walked the land around town, memorizing paths, hiding places, distances between buildings. She set small traps along the roads, not to injure but to observe. She learned who traveled when, who drank too much, who walked home alone. Every detail mattered. Revenge to Hattie was not about rage. It was about balance. The first to fall was Thomas Briggs. One stormy night, with rain hammering the roof of the saloon, Briggs locked up and stepped into the darkness behind his building. He never made it home. By morning, his body was found tangled in a fallen fence by the river, his neck broken. It was ruled an accident, a drunk man's misstep, but Hattie knew the truth. She had lured him there, played on his habits, guided him into darkness that showed him no mercy. One down, Elias Crow grew nervous after Briggs's death. He increased his presence in town, spoke more often, tried to project strength, but fear had already taken root. Animals on his ranch began to disappear. Strange symbols appeared carved into fence posts, marks that stirred memories Crow had worked hard to forget. He hired men to guard his land, but no guard can protect someone from their own mind. Crow began drinking heavily, his speeches slurring, his confidence cracking in public. Hattie's final confrontation with Crow came on a night when the moon hung low and red. She visited his ranch alone, knowing exactly where to find him. She spoke his name, and when he turned, recognition finally dawned. For the first time in years, Hattie broke her silence. She reminded him of the people he had destroyed, the lives erased for convenience and greed. Crow begged. He offered money, protection, anything. Hattie refused it all. By morning, Crow's ranch burned and his body was found inside. The fire officially ruled an accident caused by a tipped lantern. Jonah Pike was the last. By then, he understood that something was hunting him. He slept with his gun nearby, jumped at shadows, started accusing innocent people. The town lost faith in him quickly. One evening, Pike followed a lead that no one else could verify, riding out alone. He never returned. His horse came back without him, blood on the reins. No body was ever found. Some said Pike fled. Others said the land itself swallowed him. Hattie never confirmed anything. She didn't need to. When spring came, Ashcroft's Bend felt different. The air was lighter, as if something poisonous had been lifted. The missing girl was never found, but after the men vanished, no other child ever disappeared on that road again. Hattie continued working at the dry goods store for a short while, then quietly packed her belongings. One morning, her cabin stood empty. No note, no explanation, just absence. Some say Hattie Redbird rode west, others say north. A few claim she never left at all, that she became part of the land, watching from the shadows. In the years that followed, Ashcroft's Bend faded like so many frontier towns, left behind by progress and memory. But the story of 1,899 remained, passed down in hushed voices, a reminder that even in places ruled by lawless men, justice has a way of finding its own path. And if you ever find yourself on a lonely road where the past feels too close, remember this. Silence does not always mean surrender. Sometimes it means someone is listening, waiting, and making sure that one day the scales will finally balance. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with others who love dark and mysterious tales. And until next time, stay safe, keep your eyes open, and remember some stories refuse to stay buried.